Chapter 5 Martell Summary King's Landing Seats to the King in the North. Please just name your terms, King Robb, and we will meet them. Aye, what? What is going on? They broke apart to a squawking Arya and a silent courtyard. Sansa felt her lips twitch in what was sure to be hysterical laughter. Jon, beside her, ducked his head and remained quiet. Sansa tipped her head to the side and saw Willa open her mouth, glee suffusing her features. Sansa spoke then, not because she wanted to, rather because she was sure that if she heard whatever Willa was thinking, she'd turn an entirely undignified scarlet. Arya, I'm sure I don't need to explain what a relationship is. Sansa paused for a beat to let Arya say something. When she only gaped at her soundlessly, Sansa continued, feeling caught between desperation and a rising bout of giggles. I can explain it to you if... What I meant, Arya bit out, finally finding her voice, is why, Jon? Why are you kissing our brother? Cousin, Jon cut in. Robb's legitimized me, too, if you were. You know, wondering. He trailed off at Arya's withering look. You know what, I think my horse needs to be taken care of. I'll just be over there. He jerked a finger back over to his men, if you want to talk to me. And the man who is known for being one of the best war commanders in Robb's army, the man who'd single-handedly broken 3 sieges and thrown Kevin Lannister in chains, he turned and ran, without so much as a look backwards. Arya, Sansa said, stepping forward and speaking lowly. How long? Arya. How long? I don't know. Arya cut her a disbelieving look. She saw Alice step forward, grinning at Jon. Sansa pursed her lips and motioned for Arya to follow her, which Arya did, irritably. They ended up in a small storeroom off the entrance hall. Sansa barred the door and turned to Arya resignedly. I don't know, she said. I just... Before we went to King's Landing? Arya demanded. Before that? When, Sansa? On the way back, Sansa said finally. That's when it started for me, at least. When I started to feel it. But we didn't do anything until after Peter was captured. And you love him? Yes, thought Sansa. More than you can know. He knows the darkest parts of me and still loves me. He sees me at my worst and doesn't turn from it. Sometimes I don't think I know how to live without loving him. Yes, she said quietly. Arya looked up at her, eyes dark and hard. Sansa felt a pit form in her stomach at the sight. If Arya hated this idea so much, if Arya were to denounce them entirely in the end, it might not change much, but it would hurt. Arya was her sister and Jon's sister too. Her opinion held weight. But if Sansa had spent these past few weeks growing older, growing wiser, her sister had done no less. Arya sighed, abruptly, and scrubbed a hand down her face in the same manner that their father did when faced with something distressing. For you, said Arya, I am doing this for you. For you and for Jon. I'm not getting you a wedding present or anything for your anniversaries from here on out. And he's my brother, do you understand? Nothing is going to change that. Sansa reached forward to catch Arya's hand. Arya stepped away. Nothing, she said. Do you promise, Sansa? Sansa nodded. He'll always be your brother, Arya. I do not doubt it. I don't think he's ever not loved you. I don't think he can love you. Nothing I or anyone does can change that. Then you've my blessing. Arya raised her chin and then grinned wryly, all boyish strands of hair and sliding, shifty eyes. For what it's worth. A great deal, I assure you. There was a pause, and then... Just don't kiss Jon in front of me, please. Now that I cannot promise. Sansa. Sansa didn't giggle, but it was a close thing. A moment later, she dodged Arya's punch and then twisted because she wouldn't be herself if she didn't give as good as she got. It was nice, in the end, to have someone's acceptance. You have the Kingslayer, Jon said incredulously. A smile played across Sansa's face, and 34 other hostages. He gaped at her. What? How did that happen? How did you? Lyra said it was 100 Lannisters. 112. 112 Lannisters at your gates. Jon threw up his hands. How did you defeat them? Sansa looked at him, bright-eyed and beautiful. I spent 3 weeks crafting battle plans, she said. And when our food stores ran low, I led 300 women out of this castle and into battle. And you won, Jon said flatly. Her smile grew into a grin. And we won, she agreed. Later, she'd tell him the precise battle plans. Later, Sansa would tell him how they broke the Lannisters. Later, Sansa would take him to the dungeons and present each captive, and they'd decide their fates. But right then, all she did was step forward, arms wrapping around his neck, and kissed him hard enough that Jon was hard-pressed to remember his own name, much less some foolish Lannister's fate. To the King in the North. Robb, I address this to you as my brother, and not the King. I'm sure you've heard that there was a force of 100 Lannisters came north to Last Hearth, besieging us for weeks on end. They were aided by Boltons. Ramsay Snow, bastard of Roose Bolton, led them through the Dreadfort and brought them here. The army was defeated a week ago. We have the Kingslayer and various other highborn Lannisters as hostages. Jon arrived yesterday. We are under no attack. Last Hearth is held by your men. Stay safe, and we shall hopefully see each other soon. From the hand of your beloved sister, Sansa Stark, Princess of the North. To Sir Jon Targaryen. There's a rider coming to Last Hearth with more information. Good job. Please tell Sansa that next time she sends me a letter telling me an army that was just besieging the castle she was inside is defeated, some detail would be appreciated. Again, good job. Stay safe, and we shall hopefully see each other soon. Robb Stark, King in the North. I never liked fighting, Jarrell said quietly. Alice looked at her and arched an eyebrow. There are rumors that your mother put a sword in your hand the day you were born. Foolish, Jarrell snorted. Didn't let Lyra hold one until she turned 6, and she was just chomping at the bit to have one. But I always feel really uneasy holding one, you know? Too much power. Too much something. I'd be happy to never have to hold one again. But you're good at it, said Arya. Idara arched an eyebrow. What does that have to do with anything? Different people take to different things. I couldn't bear to so much as look at that mutton stew Alice loves, but she eats it daily. Still, they were all sitting or sprawling, as the case may be, in Sansa's solar. Willa and Winifred had fought, again, and so were sulking in their separate bedchambers, and Mira was writing a letter to her brother, but the rest were mostly just relaxing as had been customary when they had the time. There was something nice in spending time with people who were in similar positions, with people who had fought in battle beside you and risked their lives for you. Some like swords, Idara said with a delicate shrug. Some, like you, Arya, love it and can't live without it. Others, like Alice, love it and can live without it. Others, like Jarrell, don't love it but can bear it. And then there are people like me who cannot bear it at all. We are our own people, first and foremost. I'd think you, of all people, could understand it. Another would call it cowardice, Arya said. Jarrell shoved her with her knee reproachfully. Adara hated what we were going to do, but she did what she could. Not everyone can be the hero on the battlefield, Arya. Arya smirked at her. Not everyone can be me, you mean? Idara peered at the small stitches in the cloth she was embroidering, lips twitching at just the corners. I think, she commented, Jarrell meant that not everyone wants to be you. Oh, hissed Alice. That's cruel, Idara. Let the girl have some confidence left, yes? 'Tis cruel to take it all away. Hey, Arya snapped. She heard Jarrell stifle a snicker into her sleeve, and then Alice threw her head back and laughed, wild and free. Edoras smiled at Arya apologetically, and after that, there was nothing Arya could do but laugh too. A rider is coming, Sansa said flatly, staring at Jon. He and the rider, Edoras' brother, wilted slightly. That's all Robb said in his letter. I'd expect you to expand upon that sentence, Jon, because I, for one, didn't know what to expect with the rider. I certainly didn't expect this. Neither did I, he protested. Robb could have been referring to anything. I didn't think. He'd do this? Jon winced. He'd tell you like this. So you knew that he was planning this, Sansa said. And for the past 2 weeks, for all the conversations we have had, you didn't think this was important to tell me. It slipped my mind. Her council, seated around the table, looked amused. What were you doing so diligently? Willa asked, tone full of enough insinuation to make both Jon and Sansa flush an ugly red. She leaned forward, eyes bright and teasing. We're fascinated, Lord Targaryen, truly. Tell us everything. I don't want to be here, muttered Arya. Sansa took a deep, fortifying breath and threw the package in her arms onto the table. It rattled and she felt her ribs rattle with it. How was one supposed to react when your brother decided that he didn't want the responsibility of ruling? Or at least didn't want to rule alone? Robb had sent Udera's brother to Last Hearth with 3 crowns, one each for Sansa, Arya, and Bran. And he'd only told Jon to crown Sansa, presumably Arya's and Bran's coronation was optional. Tell me again slowly where he got this idea. Jon again winced. Well, it all began when you were angry. You know, when Robb didn't tell you he was sending you to Last Hearth, and you and Arya were so bloody furious. We made his life miserable, Arya told Mira quietly, though not quietly enough that nobody could hear. Gods, it was so difficult burning his toast I couldn't even sleep that night, had to lie in wait in the kitchens for the cook to come. And it was worth it, I swear, every part. I understand, Mira murmured. Jojen is not that bad, but sometimes he gets very irritating. Adara only tilted a look at her brother, who was shrinking into the tapestries behind him, looking as if he wished desperately to be anywhere but where he was presently. If the interruptions continue, Sansa said sharply, I'm sending everyone outside. So you can spend more time with your lover? Willa asked gleefully. I didn't think you so adventurous, princess, nor so bold. Sansa frowned, and Willa went on through Winifred's desperate attempts at silencing her. In broad daylight, taking a man to bed, why, one might think it salacious. Though I suppose you aren't taking him to bed, are you? Arya half retched, and Sansa pointed at the door. Out, she snapped. Get out! And the next time I hear you being so disrespectful, Willa, I will have Winifred cut off every last bit of your hair. Don't think I won't. At Willa's snort, Sansa arched an eyebrow. She's still angry that you didn't tell her about your knee, you know. Willa's knee had been injured in the battle, and it had been worse than Sansa's shoulder ever had the chance to get. Winifred had scarcely managed to salvage her sister's leg, and it seemed that Willa might have a limp for the rest of her life. Winifred was still bitter about it, and Sansa wasn't above using that for her gain. Shooting a dirty look over her shoulder, Willa left. The others followed slowly, reluctantly. Sansa waited for them impatiently. As soon as the door closed, she slumped into her chair and rubbed her temples, breathing deeply. After a long, irritable pause, she turned to Jon. You didn't mention that when you told me everything else, she said. Jon grimaced. I wanted you to laugh. I thought you'd find it funny that Robb was being so dramatic. And I might have added this too, but, well, you got angry. It was her turn to wince. Sansa had, And it was really because everything had been a confluence of Rob's secrecy, and then her parents' support of Rob's decisions, and then her own hurt pride. She'd snapped at Jon, and while it wasn't completely undeserving, neither had it been kind of her. So it was a jape at first, Sansa prompted when Jon looked hesitant. Right. Then it became something like, why not? Then Jon breathed deep. Then it was repeated enough times, and we were maybe a little drunk, and I remembered old Nan's tales, and, well, do you remember what she said of Garth Greenhand's children? Sansa blinked. No, she said frankly. He was a conqueror, wasn't he? I didn't pay attention to the songs that weren't romantic. The bloody ones weren't that interesting. Those were the only ones that were interesting, said Jon, and then shook away her protests. Anyways, Garth's children were each given crowns, and he broke apart his kingdom into pieces for each of them, and they each were called kings or queens as it were. Garth Greenhand, Sansa exhaled sharply and slumped into her seat. He's a legend, Jon. We can't use that as a basis for our government. The basis of our government is Rob's decisions, Jon said simply. And the gods know that he needs someone to tell him when he's being stupid. It isn't sustainable. If you all survive everything that's happening in the future, and all of you marry, and all of you have children, then you can decide what's going to happen. He shrugged. Until then, it makes sense if we have enough rulers to hold the North through the worst of the long night. All of you have different strengths, and you'll have to work together to survive. And what makes Rob so much better a leader than the rest of you? She sighed, tracing the whorls of the table. And what of Rickon? When he's grown to 15, we'll make that decision. Sansa yet hesitated, and Jon leaned forward, catching her hand in his. For just a heartbeat, she wondered how it might have been had the two of them not been who they were. A better world, Sansa decided. But they weren't just two people in love with each other. They were princesses and knights, Targaryens and Starks. They were children shaping the world they wanted to inherit. For all that Sansa might have been happy in another world, this love wouldn't have been forged in blood and fear. For all that she might have been content, she'd not have been half as strong, and this love wasn't the measure of her life. So when Jon said firmly, "Accept the crown," Sansa reached one trembling hand and drew the largest crown from the sack. Chin up. You are a Stark, and you can be brave. You will be brave. Tell me, Jon, she whispered, and now she was the one holding on to him. In one hand she held the crown, and in another she held Jon, and if anyone dared to tell her that she couldn't have both, Sansa would remake the world until she could. Tell me, would you be willing to take a queen as your wife? So this is the Kingslayer. Jaime lolled his head upwards to meet the man's voice. It was strange, in all honesty, after spending so long with only women entering and exiting these rooms. Recognition was slow in coming, but when it did, he wanted to turn and hide. Weren't Ned Stark's daughters enough of a torment? Why did he have to face his bastard son, too? Are your accommodations survivable? The bastard asked. I'm here, aren't I? He asked sourly. Aye. How did it feel to be bested by a group of women who haven't yet seen their 20th name day? Miserable. Jaime folded himself inwards and glared at the floor. If you've only come to gloat, congratulations, you've done it. Now leave. The bastard had sounded amused before, but now his voice was only hard. I came to ask you who put you in touch with Ramsay, he said. I came to ask one question, Kingslayer, and if you answer it properly, you won't have to worry about anyone else coming and asking more things so long as you're in these walls. Why should I answer you? Jaime asked. When the bastard chose to focus on settling against his chair instead of answering, Jaime smirked. Because you'll leave me alone? I'm more irritating than you could ever hope to be, Stark bastard or no. Oh, you haven't heard? The bastard arched an eyebrow. I'm no Stark bastard, not any longer. Turns out Lord Stark kept some secrets, and, well, my father was never a Stark, Kingslayer, though my mother was." His lips quirked. "My father was Rhaegar Targaryen. To keep me safe from Robert Baratheon, Lord Stark claimed me as his own. When he found out, Robb had me legitimized, so it's now Jon Targaryen who stands before you." "Such love," Jaime spat. Jon Targaryen sighed. "Anyhow, what matters is that you speak to me, Kingslayer, because there will be consequences if you don't." Because Jaime couldn't believe these women and children could devise such horrific things, and also because they were raised by the Honorable Ned Stark, he asked, "Like what?" "Like asking your bannermen the same question," Jon answered levelly, "and getting impatient when they, too, refuse to answer." "Impatience is supposed to frighten me?" "My dire wolf is supposed to frighten you," he said. "Did you know they respond to our emotions?" "Oh, don't worry, Kingslayer, we won't touch you, not a bit. We need you as a hostage. But your men? They're rather fair game." "You're threatening." "I'm promising," Jon said flatly. "I'm promising that if you don't answer me truthfully, that if I'm not satisfied, I'm going to send you back to your father's arms with your bannermen in a box that will fit in your arms, and you'll have to tell each of their families why they don't even have the bones to bury." Ramsay's scream, cut short by a direwolf's jaws to his throat. The red raw pieces that had littered the ground afterwards. The meaty, panting breaths of a shadow-black direwolf waiting for Jaime to breathe wrong. Jaime breathed deep and tried to slow his pounding heart. "What do you want to know?" Jon leaned forward, arms braced against his thighs. "Did Roose Bolton speak to your father?" "Yes," Jaime said immediately. "I've seen the letters." "Who sent the first one?" "I don't know." At Jon's abrupt movement towards the door, Jaime snapped, "I don't. I only saw them in passing, enough to see their flayed man in the seal. Nothing more." Slowly, he seated himself. "Fine. How did you come this far north?" "Ramsay Snow met us at the neck and gave northern uniforms. Then he took us through the Dreadfort and up the river and led us here." "Why did the Boltons side with you?" Jaime shrugged. "They thought your cousin would fail and wanted insurance. If they made him fail by taking the entire North hostage, well, we promised them Winterfell, and that made them very happy. I don't know, do I? I don't claim to have deep knowledge of your northern politics, as primitive as all of you are." "You don't seem to have deep knowledge of anything," muttered Jon, and then shook his head. "Very well. Last question. What would you have done if you had taken the castle?" "I'd have taken your sisters and brother hostage," Jaime said slowly. "I would have married some of their ladies to some of my bannermen, and then sent ravens to the major houses telling them what they would do if they wanted to ever see their daughters again." "Just as I thought," he said, and rose to his feet. "Very well. I thank you for your cooperation, Kingslayer." "Roose Bolton," Robb said, "by the laws of the North, you are to be killed for treason. Do you have any last words?" "You will fail," said Roose, pale eyes gleaming with hatred. "You will fail, boy. What are you trying to achieve? How much vengeance is enough? You're a child, and all the men fighting beside you are fools, and worse to think, you'll lead them to victory when you don't even know what that is." "I'm your king," Robb said lowly. "You knelt and gave me this crown. If you'd spoken to me of this in private, I might have listened. But you went to the Lannisters instead, and you sent your bastard son to lead them to where my sisters were, and I cannot forgive that." His hands were tight on the hilt of his sword, and there was a roar in his ears like a rising tide. Robb inhaled, set his shoulders, and said, "Kneel." The sword descended, and when Roose's head landed in the earth, Robb turned and met his bannermen's gazes. "If there are Bolton bannermen who wish to hold to their lord's treason, they can choose either exile or death." Robb let all his grief, his betrayal, his rage show. "Leave tonight, and I will not send a single man after your heads." The next morning, he asked the Great John how many men had left under the cover of darkness. The Great John smiled, sharp and fierce, his teeth shining like fangs. He said, "Not a one, my lord." A week later, as the sun rose, the entire keep arranged itself in the great hall for Sansa's coronation. Sansa drew the gown's heavy fur neckline tighter around her shoulders. It was a fine blue, so pale it looked almost white, and it had taken Adara and 3 other women 4 days to make it. Everyone was waiting for her, but Sansa couldn't help but stall for a few more minutes. At another time, she had wanted so desperately to be queen, and it had led to such disaster. Here, she'd be content to have the ability to control her life. Sansa had her family beside her, and that was all she'd ever wanted. The chance to have both had never been so much as dreamt of. "You are Sansa Stark, you are a Stark. You will bend before you break, and you will break before you die, and you will survive the darkest things that can be thrown at you. You will fight. You will defend what you must and conquer what you can. Chin up, darling." Slowly, steadily, she left the safety of the shadows and moved down the corridor. A half-beat later, she turned the corner and saw the crowd. Sansa did not falter an inch, did not let herself pause for even a heartbeat. She seated herself on the wooden chair which would serve as her throne, and looked out into the overcrowded hall. In the front row was her council, each dressed in a gown of their own choosing. Rickon was seated beside Arya, whom she'd insisted on sitting closer to her throne than any other. Jon stood beside her, already holding the crown. "By the edict written by King Robb Stark's own hand," he announced, "I present this woman here before you as queen. Princess Sansa of the House Stark is to become queen in the north, of equal rank to her brother and all. Do you, the representatives of the northern houses, assent?" As one, her council rose, but it was Alice alone who stepped forward and said, "King Robb offered out our father's vengeance, and they proclaimed him the king in the north. When the Lannisters came, however, it was Princess Sansa who put steel in our hands and told us to stand strong." She knelt. "The North has known no queen for 3 centuries. 'Tis fitting that the first to bear the crown is the kindest, bravest woman in all the North. I say, I'll bend the knee to Queen Sansa and I'll defend her to my grave." "Lady Alice speaks truly," said Adara. "We are the women of the North, we are the Valkyries of the North, and there is not one person here who can say that she has not led us well." She too knelt, and threw her head back, cried, "The Queen in the North!" When Robb was crowned, his men drew swords. For Sansa's coronation, they threw flowers into the air, blue roses, thorns, and all. The petals caught in her hair, and when she ran a hand through them, they fell to the ground like so many pieces of the sky. "Thank you," said Sansa. "I will never forget this. I will never forget all of you. You fought beside me. You fought for me. And if I am here to be crowned, it is because of your valor." She swallowed hard and then stretched a hand out to Arya. "Come here," Sansa ordered. Arya shot her a strange look, but obeyed. When she stood next to her, Sansa nodded to Adara's brother and waited for him to walk up the aisle. As he walked down it, whispers rose around him, confusion, and in its wake surprised realization. But for all that we fought together, for all that each of us held and held strong that day, the battle would not have been won if not for Arya's courage. Sansa felt a small smile turn the corners of her lips up. "And I believe it is a proper act, for the first act of the first Queen of Winter in 300 years to be to crown another." I'll agree to this," said Willa, suddenly smiling wide and hard enough to rend open a man's stomach. "You put steel in our hands and offered us vengeance when any other would have bowed their heads. You led us into battle with no crown save for that red hair, and we flocked to you as if it were one. And your sister took down the Kingslayer himself. She led women out of those gates and drew enough food from the woods that we could last for another week. She was the one to give us even a hint of a warning. What other woman can compare? What other woman can stand where the two of you do? They've named your brother the Young Wolf, Mira said, stepping forward to flank Willa. They call him King Robb the Valiant, and the small folk from the Twins to Riverrun know and adore him. Why should we not do the same? Willa went down on her knees, gracefully. She plucked a blue rose from one of the vases flanking the tables, the stem long enough to treat as a sword, and held it aloft. All hail Queen Sansa the Merciful, she cried. The council knelt, as well, and then the other women followed them. All hail Queen Arya the Vengeful. And in that moment, the rising sun cut through the paned glass windows, spilling over the whole hall, gilding the hall in a halo of brilliant gold. Sansa felt her breath catch at the beauty, at the power these women offered her so unthinkingly, so easily, at the trust being forged in the room right before her eyes. Breathing deep, she picked up the crown and turned to Arya. Easily, calmly, Arya went down to her knees and Sansa placed the steel ring on her brow. Willa tipped her head back, and she grinned brilliantly at Sansa, and then called loud and clear, "All hail the Queens of Winter!" Others took up the cry, and it echoed loud enough that Sansa couldn't hear herself speak. But she did turn slightly and saw Jon watching her from right behind. His eyes were soft, and he was smiling just as brightly as Arya, and there was such love in his expression that Sansa felt her breath catch and tears rise in her eyes. She beckoned him forward and took his hand, lacing their fingers together tight enough to whiten her knuckles. "You will stand beside me," she thought. "You will stand beside me for the rest of my days, I swear it. You will stand beside me, not behind me, not in front. You will stand beside me and we will rule the North together." And so, that night Sansa went to the Godswood. This was smaller, more private. Only the men Jon was closest to amongst the 20 rode north, and then Sansa's council, Arya, and Rickon. There were small lights that Mira had strung up with Jarrell, a type of moss, Mira had told her, that shone like the stars under moonlight, and they glittered around the heart tree like so many lanterns. Jon wore a doublet of lightest gray, and in the dim light, she was sure she'd never seen someone so handsome. Later, they'd have a larger wedding in Winterfell, but before that they'd have this between them and them alone. Before the heart tree, she reached out and took his hands. "Sansa of the House Stark comes before the old gods," she said. "She is a woman grown, and she comes to be wedded." "Jon of the House Targaryen comes before the old gods," Jon echoed, eyes warm enough to make Sansa's cheeks flare with heat. "He is a man grown, and he comes to be wedded." His voice softened, lowered, became more private. "Will you take me, Queen Sansa?" "With all my heart," Sansa murmured, eyes unflinching, eyes unwavering, eyes unrelenting. "And you, Lord Jon? Will you take me?" "Aye," he said. Breathed in and went on. "From this day until the end of my days, I swear it! I swear to stand beside you. I swear to protect you, love you, and give you all that I am and have. I swear it by every god who is listening, and all those who don't care to." It felt as inevitable as the tides, as the sunrise, as the turn of the stars. It felt as hot as wildfire and as welcoming as a hearth fire. Sansa looked up at Jon and felt as if he'd cut open her ribcage, as if he'd crawled inside her lungs and rested right beside her heart. It felt as if she did the same. "And I swear to stand beside you," she whispered. "To love you until I breathe my last, and to offer you everything I am, everything I own. I swear it by the old gods and the new." "I love you," Sansa thought, and traced an unshaking hand up his jaw before kissing him soundly. Their father sent a raven telling of a company of 200 men riding to Last Hearth. They were to escort Sansa, Arya, and the 30-odd Lannister captives back south to Winterfell. Sansa had expected them to side-eye her, and they did. She had expected them to avoid her, and they did. She had expected them to treat her half as a precious glass statue and half as a fire-burnt corpse, and they did. What she hadn't expected was the small folks' awe. When they stopped in a village, they clustered around Sansa and Arya, whispering and reaching for them. They asked them to bless their children, bless their marriages, bless their dead family. The whispers of Sansa's beauty and kindness left her uncomfortable, but it was Arya who stammered and almost ran when they began praising her valor. Queen Sansa, the Merciful, they called her, and Sansa would have cheerfully strangled Willow with her bare hands had they been within a day's ride of her. When they cheered for Arya, naming her the Vengeful, Sansa placed Jon and Ghost as a rotating guard around her for almost 2 days before she was sure Arya wouldn't run back to Last Earth and slit Willow's throat in her sleep.